The mahogany boardroom on the 42nd floor of Sterling Industries gleamed under the afternoon sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Marcus Sterling, worth approximately $12 billion according to the latest Forbes estimate, sat at the head of the polished table, his silver fountain pen hovering over the power of attorney documents. The papers were spread before him like a map to his future, or perhaps, as he would later realize, like a trap he had nearly walked into willingly. Across from him sat Victoria Sterling, his wife of 15 years, her manicured fingers drumming silently against her designer handbag. She wore a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, her blonde hair perfectly styled in a way that spoke of expensive salons and careful maintenance. Her smile was warm, encouraging, the same smile that had captivated him all those years ago at a charity gala in Manhattan. "Darling, you're overthinking this," Victoria said softly, her voice carrying just the right amount of concern and affection. "We discussed this thoroughly. With your travel schedule becoming more demanding and the international expansion, it only makes sense to have someone you trust completely handle things when you're away." Marcus nodded slowly, though something in his chest felt tight. The documents before him would grant Victoria complete power of attorney over his business affairs, personal finances, and property holdings. It was a level of control that would make her one of the most powerful women in America, capable of making decisions worth billions without consulting anyone. The law firm's conference room felt smaller somehow as Mr. Harrison, the senior partner at Morrison Wells and Associates, cleared his throat. "Mr. Sterling, I want to ensure you understand the full scope of what you're about to sign. This comprehensive power of attorney grants Mrs. Sterling authority over all business transactions, real estate holdings, investment decisions, and financial accounts. She would have the legal right to sell assets, make investments, sign contracts, and essentially act with the same authority as yourself in all matters." Victoria leaned forward slightly, her hand reaching across the table to touch Marcus's arm. "Charles, please don't make this sound so ominous. We're married. Marcus and I are a team. This is simply a practical arrangement for a practical man who's built an empire and needs someone he trusts to help manage it." Charles Harrison had been handling legal matters for wealthy families for over 30 years. He had seen marriages dissolve, fortunes disappear, and trusted individuals become the architects of financial ruin. Something about this particular arrangement made him uncomfortable, though he couldn't quite place his finger on why. Perhaps it was the way Victoria had insisted on specific language in the documents, or how she had been the one to schedule this meeting while Marcus was recovering from a minor surgical procedure last month. "Of course, Mrs. Sterling," Harrison replied diplomatically. "I simply want to ensure Mr. Sterling is fully informed. Marcus, you should know that this arrangement can be revoked at any time, but while in effect Victoria would have extraordinary authority. Some of our other clients have chosen more limited arrangements, perhaps focusing on specific business operations or time-limited authority." Marcus lifted the pen again, his mind wandering to the conversation he and Victoria had last week. She had been so understanding about his need to focus on the Asian markets, so supportive of his vision to expand Sterling Industries into new territories. The merger with the Japanese technology firm alone would require months of delicate negotiations and travel. Having someone manage the day-to-day operations made perfect sense. "I appreciate your thoroughness, Charles," Marcus said, his voice steady. "But Victoria's right. We've built this life together. She understands my business philosophy better than anyone. When I'm negotiating deals in Tokyo or Seoul, I need to know someone I trust completely is handling things here." Victoria's smile widened just slightly. "Thank you for having such faith in me, darling. I promise I'll make decisions exactly as you would." The pen touched the signature line. Marcus began forming the first letter of his name when his assistant's voice crackled through the conference room's intercom system. "Mr. Sterling, I'm terribly sorry to interrupt, but there's an urgent call for you. It's Eleanor Hartwell. She says it's extremely important and can't wait." Marcus paused, his pen frozen above the paper. Eleanor Hartwell was his former business partner's widow, a woman he hadn't spoken to in over 2 years. She was also one of the shrewdest individuals he had ever met, someone whose judgment he had learned to respect during their brief but successful business relationship. Victoria's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on her handbag. "Darling, can't this wait? We're in the middle of something important here." "Mrs. Hartwell was quite insistent, sir," the assistant continued. "She specifically asked me to tell you it concerns documents you're about to sign today." A chill ran down Marcus's spine. How could Eleanor possibly know about today's meeting? He looked across the table at Victoria, whose face had shifted from warm encouragement to something harder to read. "Put her through," Marcus said, reaching for the conference phone. "Marcus, thank goodness I caught you in time." Eleanor's voice filled the room, clear and urgent. "Listen to me very carefully. Whatever you do, don't sign anything today, not until we talk." Victoria stood abruptly. "I think this is highly inappropriate. We don't even know what this woman wants. She's probably trying to involve you in some scheme or investment opportunity." Eleanor's voice cut through Victoria's protests. "Mrs. Sterling, how lovely to hear your voice. Though I should mention the scheme I'm concerned about is much closer to home than you might think." Marcus felt his heart rate increase. "Eleanor, what are you talking about? How do you even know about today?" "Because 3 days ago, Victoria contacted my attorney asking about the procedures for liquidating large asset portfolios quickly and quietly. She specifically asked about offshore accounts and shell companies that could hide large financial transfers. When my lawyer mentioned this to me, knowing about my past business relationship with you, I started asking questions." The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. Marcus stared at his wife, whose face had gone pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. "That's ridiculous," Victoria said, but her voice lacked the conviction it had carried moments earlier. "I would never—" "Eleanor, I don't know what game you're playing, but this is none of your business," Eleanor continued, her voice steady and factual. "Marcus, I spent the last 3 days having some discreet inquiries made. Victoria has been meeting with divorce attorneys for 6 months. She's also been in contact with several private investigators who specialize in asset discovery. Most concerning of all, she's been quietly moving money from joint accounts into accounts under her name only." Marcus felt as though the floor was shifting beneath him. He looked at Victoria, searching her face for some explanation, some denial that would make sense of what he was hearing. "Is this true?" he asked quietly. Victoria's composure cracked slightly. "Marcus, you have to understand, I was just protecting myself. Being married to someone as wealthy as you, there are risks. I wanted to make sure I'd be secure if anything happened to you." "Protecting yourself by planning to take control of everything I've built?" Marcus asked, his voice growing stronger. "By meeting with divorce attorneys while pretending to support my business expansion?" Harrison cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Perhaps we should postpone this signing until—" "No," Victoria interrupted, her mask finally falling away completely. "We're going to finish this now. Marcus, you can listen to this woman's paranoid fantasies, or you can trust the woman you married, the woman who stood by your side, who's helped build your public image, who's been the perfect wife for 15 years. Eleanor's voice came through the speaker again. "Marcus, ask her about the insurance policies. Ask her about the updated will she had drafted last month. Ask her why she's been researching medications that could cause heart problems in men your age." The blood drained from Marcus's face. 3 months ago, Victoria had suggested he update his will and life insurance policies, claiming it was just responsible financial planning. She had been the one to handle most of the paperwork, saying she wanted to spare him the tedious details. "Victoria," he said slowly, What insurance policies is Eleanor talking about? Victoria's face was now completely transformed, the warm, supportive wife replaced by someone Marcus barely recognized. You're all being ridiculous. Eleanor is a bitter old woman who's trying to destroy our marriage out of jealousy. She's probably hoping to get back into business with you herself. I'm 68 years old, Victoria, Eleanor said dryly. I'm hardly looking for new business ventures. What I am looking for is to prevent an old friend from making the biggest mistake of his life. Marcus set down his pen and pushed back from the table. For the first time in years, he felt truly awake, as though he had been sleepwalking through his own life. Charles, I want you to review every document Victoria has had any involvement with over the past year. Insurance policies, will updates, anything she's signed or had prepared. You can't be serious, Victoria snapped. After everything we've built together, you're going to listen to some jealous outsider over your own wife? After everything we've built together, Marcus repeated slowly, you were planning to take it all away from me. The power of attorney documents lay on the table between them, unsigned and now seeming like the trap Eleanor had warned they were. Marcus realized he had been so focused on building his empire that he had failed to notice someone close to him was planning to claim it for herself. The meeting is over, Marcus announced, standing up. Victoria, I think we need to have a very different kind of conversation. Charles, I'll be in touch about reviewing those documents. As Marcus walked toward the door, Victoria called after him. Marcus, wait. You're making a huge mistake. Eleanor doesn't understand our relationship, our partnership. Everything I did was for us, for our future together. Marcus stopped, but didn't turn around. No, Victoria. Everything you did was for yourself. The mistake would have been signing those papers. Eleanor's voice came through the speaker one final time. Marcus, there's more we need to discuss. Things about your recent health issues that you need to know. Can you meet me tomorrow? Marcus felt another chill run through him. His recent minor surgery, the one during which Victoria had been so attentive and caring, suddenly seemed less routine and more suspicious. Yes, he said quietly. I think there's a lot we need to discuss. As he left the conference room, Marcus realized that in a matter of minutes, his entire world had changed. The woman he had trusted with his heart had been planning to take everything else as well. The signature he had been about to place on those documents would have given her the legal authority to destroy everything he had worked for. Outside the building, Marcus stood on the sidewalk for a moment, breathing in the city air and feeling as though he was seeing clearly for the first time in months. His phone buzzed with a text message from Victoria, but he didn't read it. Instead, he called his head of security. James, I need you to implement Security Protocol 7 immediately, he said into the phone. Full asset protection, account monitoring, and I want a complete security assessment of my home and offices. Also, I need you to coordinate with Eleanor Hartwell tomorrow. She may have information about threats I wasn't aware of. As he walked toward his car, Marcus couldn't help but think about how close he had come to disaster. One signature away from losing everything. One phone call away from walking into a trap that had been carefully set by someone who was supposed to love him. The pen in his pocket suddenly felt very heavy, a reminder of how a simple signature could change the course of a life. He was grateful he would never find out what would have happened if Eleanor hadn't called when she did. Tomorrow would bring new revelations, new challenges, and the difficult process of untangling 15 years of marriage to someone who had been playing a very different game than he realized. But tonight, at least, he still owned his empire. The fountain pen would remain in his pocket, unused, while he figured out how to protect everything he had built from the person who had been closest to his heart. Eleanor Hartwell's penthouse overlooked Central Park, its windows offering a view that spoke of decades of successful investments and careful financial planning. At 68, she moved with the confidence of someone who had navigated the treacherous waters of high finance and emerged victorious. Marcus Sterling sat across from her in a leather chair that probably cost more than most people's cars, but his mind was far from the luxury surrounding him. "Thank you for calling yesterday," Marcus said, accepting the cup of coffee Eleanor offered. "I keep thinking about what would have happened if you hadn't." Eleanor settled into the chair opposite him, her silver hair perfectly styled but her expression serious. "Marcus, what I told you yesterday was only the beginning. The situation is far worse than you realize, and I'm afraid Victoria's plans were more advanced than even I initially thought." The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, but Marcus felt cold. He had spent the night in his office rather than going home, unable to face Victoria until he understood the full scope of what he was dealing with. His security team had already begun implementing protective measures, but Eleanor's tone suggested there were threats he hadn't yet considered. "Tell me everything," Marcus said simply. Eleanor reached for a leather portfolio on the coffee table between them. "After our call yesterday, I made more inquiries. Marcus, Victoria didn't just consult divorce attorneys and private investigators. She's been building a comprehensive plan to not just leave you, but to destroy you financially in the process." She opened the portfolio and pulled out several documents. These are copies of correspondence between Victoria and a law firm that specializes in asset seizure in high-conflict divorces. She's been mapping your entire financial empire for over a year, identifying vulnerabilities and planning attack strategies. Marcus took the papers, his hands shaking slightly as he read. The documents outlined a plan that was breathtakingly comprehensive in its malicious intent. Victoria had been working with specialists to identify every asset, every business relationship, every financial vulnerability that could be exploited. She was planning to claim half of everything in a divorce, Eleanor continued, but that wasn't enough for her. She wanted to ensure that whatever she couldn't take, you couldn't keep either. The power of attorney was just the first step. Marcus looked up from the papers. "What do you mean?" Eleanor's expression grew even more serious. "With power of attorney, she would have had the legal authority to make business decisions in your name. The plan was to use that authority to make incredibly poor investments, sign unfavorable contracts, and basically tank your business empire. By the time you could revoke the power of attorney and regain control, Sterling Industries would be worthless." The coffee cup in Marcus's hands grew heavy. "She was going to destroy everything I built just to hurt me?" "Not just to hurt you, Marcus. To benefit herself. You see, Victoria has been quietly building relationships with your competitors. She's been feeding them inside information about your business strategies, your planned mergers, your financial projections. In return, they've been setting up lucrative consulting contracts for her." Eleanor pulled out another document. "This is a contract between Victoria and Meridian Corp., your biggest competitor in the Asian markets. They've agreed to pay her $50 million for insider information and strategic sabotage. The timeline matches perfectly with your planned expansion into Japan and Korea." Marcus felt sick. Meridian Corp. had been underbidding Sterling Industries on several major contracts recently, always seeming to know exactly what prices to offer and what terms to propose. He had assumed they were just getting better intelligence from the market, never suspecting that the intelligence was coming from his own home. "There's more," Eleanor said gently. "The health concerns I mentioned yesterday. Marcus, have you been feeling unusually tired lately? Having any heart irregularities or breathing problems?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Actually, yes. My doctor said it was just stress from the business expansion, but I've been having some chest tightness and fatigue. That's part of why Victoria suggested the power of attorney so I could reduce my workload." Eleanor handed him another document. "This is a receipt from a specialized pharmacy in Switzerland. Victoria had a compound medication prepared that, when taken in small doses over time, can cause exactly those symptoms. It's undetectable in normal blood tests and creates symptoms that look like stress-related heart problems." The room seemed to spin around Marcus. Are you saying she was poisoning me? Not enough to kill you outright, but enough to make you sick, to make you dependent on her care, and to provide justification for transferring power to her. The medical records would have supported her claim that you were too ill to manage your affairs properly. Marcus set down his coffee cup, afraid he might drop it. How long has this been going on? Based on the pharmacy records, about 6 months. It coincides with when you started feeling unwell and when Victoria began suggesting you needed to delegate more responsibility to her. The weight of the betrayal was staggering. For 6 months, the woman he loved and trusted had been slowly making him sick while positioning herself to steal everything he had worked for. Every caring gesture, every expression of concern for his health, every suggestion that he needed rest had been part of an elaborate scheme. Eleanor, how did you find all this out? Eleanor smiled grimly. When you've been in business as long as I have, you develop a network of people who see things and hear things. Victoria made the mistake of involving too many different parties in her plan. Lawyers talk to other lawyers, investigators share information, and people in the pharmaceutical world know each other. Once I started asking the right questions, the answers came together quickly. Marcus stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the park where couples walked hand in hand and families played together. The normal world seemed very far away from the nightmare he had discovered his life had become. What about the insurance policies? He asked without turning around. Ah, yes. Those are particularly interesting. Victoria increased your life insurance coverage to $200 million. She also took out additional policies through 3 different companies, bringing the total death benefit to nearly $500 million. All of them have accelerated payout clauses that would allow her to collect within 30 days of your death. Marcus turned back to face Eleanor. She was planning to kill me? The medical compound she was giving you in larger doses can cause fatal heart failure that looks completely natural. Combined with your recent stress and the appearance of existing heart problems, your death would have been completely unsuspicious. She would have inherited everything as your widow, plus collected the insurance money. The scope of Victoria's plan was becoming clear. She had been positioning herself to either destroy him financially and walk away with hundreds of millions, or eliminate him entirely and inherit his entire fortune. Either way, she would emerge as one of the wealthiest women in America. Marcus, there's something else you need to know. Victoria hasn't been working alone. Eleanor pulled out a photograph. It showed Victoria entering a restaurant with a man Marcus didn't recognize. They were holding hands and looking very much like a couple. This is David Chen, a former Sterling Industries employee who was fired 2 years ago for attempting to steal trade secrets. He's been Victoria's partner in this scheme from the beginning. They've been having an affair for over 3 years. Marcus sank back into his chair. The betrayal was complete. Not only had Victoria been planning to destroy him financially, poison him slowly, and potentially kill him, but she had been doing it all while having an affair with someone who already hated him. They've been living together in a penthouse apartment in downtown, Eleanor continued. Victoria told Chen that once you were out of the picture, they would have enough money to disappear anywhere in the world and live like royalty. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text message. Without thinking, he looked at it. It was from Victoria. Marcus, please come home. We need to talk. I can explain everything. Eleanor is lying to you because she wants to destroy our marriage. Don't let her poison you against me. Eleanor noticed his expression. She's good, isn't she? Even now, when her plan has fallen apart, she's still trying to manipulate you. What should I do? Marcus asked. How do I handle this? If I go to the police, it becomes public. The scandal could destroy Sterling Industries even if she doesn't. Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. That's exactly what she's counting on. Victoria knows that your reputation and the stability of your company are important to you. She's betting that you won't risk destroying Sterling Industries to pursue justice against her. So she might get away with everything? Not necessarily. There are ways to handle this quietly, But you need to be very careful. Victoria is desperate now. When people like her are cornered, they become dangerous. Eleanor's phone rang, and she answered it quickly. After a brief conversation, she hung up with a troubled expression. Marcus, that was my security consultant. Victoria and Chen have been trying to track down where you spent the night. They've been calling your usual hotels, checking with your assistant, even attempting to access your credit card records. They're looking for you. Why would they be doing that? Because they know their plan has failed, but they might be considering more direct action. If they can't get your money legally through the power of attorney, and they can't slowly poison you over time, they might be desperate enough to try something more immediate. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. You think they might try to hurt me physically? I think they're desperate, and desperate people make dangerous choices. Victoria has already shown she's willing to poison you slowly. If she thinks you're about to expose her, she might decide that a more direct approach is her only option. The phone in Marcus's pocket buzzed again. This time it was a call from his head of security. He answered immediately. James, what's the situation? Sir, we've detected unusual activity around your home and office buildings. There are people conducting surveillance who aren't part of our team. Also, someone attempted to access your personal medical records from your doctor's office this morning. What kind of surveillance? Professional level. These aren't amateur stalkers. Someone has hired experienced people to monitor your locations and track your movements. Marcus looked at Eleanor, who had heard enough of the conversation to understand what was happening. James, I'm not coming home tonight either. Implement Security Protocol 9 and make sure no one gets access to any of my medical or financial information without my direct authorization. Understood, sir. Should I contact law enforcement? Marcus hesitated. Not yet, but be ready to if the situation escalates. After he hung up, Eleanor stood and walked to her safe. She pulled out a small recording device. Marcus, before you make any decisions about how to handle this, you need to hear something else. Last night, after your meeting ended badly, Victoria made some phone calls. My security consultant was able to intercept them. She pressed play on the device. Victoria's voice filled the room, clear and angry. The plan failed David. That bitch Eleanor somehow found out and warned him. Marcus left without signing anything. A man's voice, presumably Chen, responded. So what do we do now? We've invested too much in this to just walk away. We don't walk away. We move to Plan B. If we can't get control of his assets legally, we take them another way. What are you talking about? I still have access to his personal spaces, his schedule, his routine. We know he trusts me enough that he'll meet with me if I ask. One conversation, one drink with the right addition, and our problems are solved permanently. Victoria, are you talking about killing him? I'm talking about survival, David. Marcus is too smart. Now that Eleanor has gotten to him, he's going to start investigating. If he finds out about everything we've done, we'll both end up in prison. But if he has an unfortunate accident before he can expose us, we inherit everything and disappear. The recording ended. Marcus sat in stunned silence, processing what he had just heard. His wife of 15 years was not only planning to rob him blind, but she was now actively planning to murder him to cover up her crimes. Eleanor sat back down across from him. Marcus, I don't think you have the luxury of handling this quietly anymore. Victoria and Chen are now planning to kill you to prevent exposure. You need to involve law enforcement immediately. Marcus nodded slowly, finally understanding that he was no longer dealing with a greedy spouse, but with someone who posed an immediate threat to his life. Eleanor, will you help me? I need someone I can trust to coordinate with the authorities and make sure this is handled properly. Of course. But Marcus, you need to understand that once we involve the police, there's no going back. Your marriage will be over. Victoria will likely spend the rest of her life in prison, and there will be a public scandal. Better a public scandal than a private funeral, Marcus replied grimly. As Eleanor began making phone calls to attorneys and law enforcement contacts, Marcus stood at the window again, looking out over the city he had conquered in business, but had nearly lost everything to the person who was supposed to love him most. The power of attorney documents were still sitting unsigned in the law office, but Victoria's plan had evolved far beyond needing his signature. Now she was planning to take everything by force, and the only thing standing between Marcus and disaster was his willingness to fight back against someone who knew all his weaknesses and had been planning his destruction for over a year. Tomorrow would bring police interviews, investigations, and the difficult process of dismantling 15 years of marriage to someone who had been his enemy all along. But at least tomorrow would come, which hadn't been guaranteed until Eleanor's warning changed everything. Detective Sarah Morrison had handled many cases involving wealthy families, but the evidence spread across the conference table in the FBI's Manhattan field office was among the most comprehensive schemes she had ever seen. Marcus Sterling sat next to Eleanor Hartwell, while federal prosecutor David Kim reviewed the documents that outlined Victoria Sterling's elaborate plot. "Mr. Sterling, I want you to understand what we're dealing with here," Detective Morrison said, her voice professional but tinged with amazement. "Your wife has committed multiple federal crimes: wire fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder, and what amounts to a sophisticated form of domestic terrorism targeting your business empire." Marcus nodded grimly. 3 days had passed since his meeting with Eleanor, and the investigation had moved swiftly once the FBI became involved. The evidence was overwhelming, but Victoria and Chen had gone underground after realizing their plan had failed. "The challenge we face," Prosecutor Kim added, "is that Victoria and Chen know you're aware of their scheme. They've abandoned their apartment and haven't used any credit cards or phones we can trace. They're operating like fugitives, which makes them even more dangerous." Eleanor leaned forward. "What about the recording where Victoria discusses moving to Plan B? Isn't that enough to arrest them for conspiracy to commit murder?" "It would be if we could find them," Morrison replied. "But we need to draw them out. They have to make contact with Marcus again for us to act." "Absolutely not," Marcus said firmly. "I'm not using myself as bait. These people have been poisoning me for months and are now planning to kill me. I'm not going to make it easy for them." Kim exchanged a look with Morrison. "Actually, Mr. Sterling, with proper protection and surveillance, it might be our best option. Victoria will eventually try to contact you because she needs to know what you've discovered. Her entire future depends on either silencing you or convincing you not to pursue charges." "She's already tried calling," Marcus admitted. 15 times since yesterday. I haven't answered, but she's getting more desperate. The last voicemail claimed she was going to hurt herself if I didn't talk to her." Morrison pulled out a small recording device. "We'd like you to answer the next time she calls. Let her know you're willing to meet with her, but insist on a public place. We'll have the entire area covered with agents, and you'll be wearing a wire. What if she doesn't come alone? What if Chen is armed?" "We'll be ready for that possibility," Morrison assured him. "But our profile suggests Victoria will want to try manipulation first. She's invested 15 years in making you believe she loves you. She'll try to use that emotional connection before resorting to violence." Eleanor placed her hand on Marcus's arm. "I'll be there too, watching from nearby. You won't be alone in this." Marcus's phone rang. The caller ID showed Victoria's number. "That's her," he said, looking at the assembled law enforcement officials. Kim nodded. "Answer it. Try to sound confused and hurt, but not angry. Let her think she might still be able to manipulate you." Marcus took a deep breath and answered the call, putting it on speaker so everyone could hear. "Victoria?" "Oh, Marcus, thank God you answered." Victoria's voice was strained, emotional. "I've been so worried about you. You haven't been home, and I didn't know if something terrible had happened. I've been staying in the office. I needed time to think about what Eleanor told me." Marcus, please don't let that woman destroy our marriage. She's bitter and jealous, and she's filling your head with lies about me. Everything I've done has been for us, for our future together. Victoria, I saw the documents, the insurance policies, the meetings with divorce attorneys. How do you explain those? There was a pause, and Marcus could almost hear Victoria calculating her response. I was scared, Marcus. You've been so sick lately, and I was terrified something might happen to you. I wanted to make sure I understood our finances, that I could take care of things if you couldn't. The insurance was just protecting us both. Morrison nodded approvingly. Victoria was sticking to a story that could sound believable to someone who wanted to believe it. What about the medication Eleanor mentioned? She said you were giving me something that was making me sick. That's insane. Victoria's voice rose with what sounded like genuine outrage. Marcus, I would never hurt you. You're everything to me. Eleanor is obviously trying to frame me for something. Maybe she's the one who's been making you sick so she could swoop in and rescue you. It was a clever response, Marcus had to admit. Victoria was turning the accusation back on Eleanor while positioning herself as the loyal wife being attacked by a jealous outsider. I want to see you, Marcus said, following the script the prosecutors had outlined. I want to hear your side of this face-to-face. Yes, of course. Come home, darling. We can work through this together. No, not the house. Too many memories, too much emotion. Meet me somewhere public where we can talk calmly. How about the restaurant where we had our anniversary dinner last month? Another pause. Victoria was clearly thinking about whether a public meeting served her purposes. All right, Marcus. Chez Laurent at 8 tonight, but please come alone. If you bring Eleanor or lawyers or anyone else, it will just make this harder. I'll be alone, Marcus promised, knowing he would actually be surrounded by federal agents. After the call ended, Morrison began coordinating with her team. We'll have the restaurant covered from every angle. Agents at nearby tables, outside on the street, even in the kitchen. Marcus, all you need to do is get her talking about her real plans. What if she doesn't confess? What if she maintains her innocence? Kim smiled grimly. Mr. Sterling, we already have enough evidence to convict her on multiple charges. This meeting is about catching her in the act of trying to silence a witness or gathering additional evidence about her co-conspirator. Either way, we win. That evening, Marcus sat at the same table where he and Victoria had celebrated their anniversary just 2 months earlier. The restaurant was elegant, dimly lit, and filled with the soft murmur of conversation from other diners, most of whom, he now knew, were federal agents. Victoria arrived exactly on time, wearing the blue dress she knew was his favorite. She looked beautiful, composed, and completely innocent of any wrongdoing. If Marcus hadn't heard the recordings and seen the evidence, he might have believed her act. Marcus, she said softly, sliding into the seat across from him. Thank you for giving me this chance to explain. I'm listening, Marcus replied, his hand unconsciously touching the small recording device hidden in his jacket. First, I want you to know that everything I've done, every decision I've made, has been because I love you and want to protect our future together. Victoria reached across the table to take his hand. When you started getting sick, I was terrified. I couldn't bear the thought of losing you. So you increased my life insurance and started meeting with divorce attorneys? Victoria's grip on his hand tightened. The insurance was practical planning. If something happened to you, I wanted to make sure your legacy was protected. And the attorneys... Marcus, I was scared that if you died, your business partners might try to claim I had no right to Sterling Industries. I needed to understand my legal position. It was a reasonable explanation, Marcus realized. Someone who wanted to believe Victoria could easily accept her story. What about David Chen? Eleanor says you've been seeing him. For the first time, Victoria's composure slipped slightly. David is... He's been helping me understand some of the technical aspects of your business. When you were too sick to explain things to me, I needed someone who understood Sterling Industries. Victoria, please don't lie to me. I know about the apartment downtown. I know you've been having an affair. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Marcus, you have to understand. When you started getting sick, when you seemed so distant and tired all the time, I felt so alone. David was someone I could talk to, someone who understood what I was going through. So you decided to betray our marriage and steal my company? No. Victoria's voice was sharp. Then she caught herself and softened it. No, Marcus, you've got it all wrong. David and I, we were trying to help you. We could see that the stress was killing you. Literally killing you. We were working on a plan to help you step back from day-to-day operations while maintaining control of your empire. Marcus felt sick listening to her continue to lie, even when faced with evidence. By getting power of attorney and making poor business decisions? Victoria leaned forward, her voice becoming urgent. Marcus, listen to me very carefully. Eleanor Hartwell is playing a long game here. She's always resented that you moved on after your business partnership with her husband ended. She's been looking for a way to get back into your financial life, and destroying our marriage is just the first step. What are you talking about? Think about it, Marcus. Who contacted you just minutes before you were about to sign documents that would have protected us both? Who had mysteriously obtained information about private legal consultations? Who benefits if our marriage falls apart and you need someone to help manage your affairs? For a moment, Marcus almost wavered. Victoria's explanation had a certain logic to it, and she was presenting it with the same conviction that had made him fall in love with her 15 years ago. But then he remembered the recording where she discussed killing him, and his resolve hardened. Victoria, if Eleanor is the real threat, then you won't mind coming with me to the police station right now to clear all this up with the authorities. Victoria's face went pale. What authorities? Marcus, you haven't involved the police in this private family matter, have you? Actually, I have. Because Eleanor had recordings of you and David planning to kill me. Victoria's mask finally fell away completely. The loving wife disappeared, replaced by someone cold and calculating. You have no idea what you've just done, Marcus. No idea at all. I've protected myself from someone who was planning to destroy me. Victoria laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think this ends with you calling the police? You think you can just walk away from this and go back to your perfect life? What are you talking about? Victoria leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. David and I have spent over a year documenting every questionable business practice Sterling Industries has ever engaged in, every tax avoidance scheme, every regulatory shortcut, every ethical gray area you've ever operated in. If you destroy me, I'll take your entire empire down with me. Marcus felt his heart rate spike. Victoria was threatening to expose confidential business information that could indeed damage Sterling Industries, even if the practices weren't illegal. You're talking about corporate blackmail now? I'm talking about mutual assured destruction, darling. You can send me to prison, but I can make sure that when I go down, Sterling Industries goes down too. Your shareholders will abandon you, your board will vote you out, and your precious empire will crumble. Marcus smiled slightly. Victoria, you're assuming I'm recording this conversation for just my own protection. Victoria's eyes widened as she realized what he was implying. That's right, Marcus continued. Everything you just said about blackmail and destroying my company was recorded by the FBI. You just confessed to extortion in addition to everything else. Victoria shot to her feet, but before she could move toward the exit, federal agents appeared from nearby tables, blocking her path. Victoria Sterling, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted murder, and now extortion, Detective Morrison announced, approaching with handcuffs. This isn't over, Marcus, Victoria hissed as the handcuffs clicked into place. David has backups of everything. Even if you destroy me, the information about Sterling Industries will come out. Actually, it won't, Agent Morrison replied. David Chen was arrested 3 hours ago trying to board a flight to Switzerland. He had a laptop full of stolen Sterling Industries data, which is now federal evidence. He's already agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. Victoria's face went white as she realized her final threat had been neutralized before she even made it. As the agents led Victoria away, Marcus remained seated at the table, feeling emotionally drained but relieved. The woman he had shared his life with for 15 years was gone, replaced by a stranger who had been planning his destruction almost from the beginning. Eleanor appeared at his side, having watched the entire operation from a table across the restaurant. "How are you feeling?" she asked gently. "Like I've been living with a complete stranger," Marcus replied. 15 years of marriage, and I never knew who she really was. "Marcus, you couldn't have known. Victoria is a sociopath. She's incredibly skilled at manipulation and deception. Even experienced investigators had trouble seeing through her act." "What happens now?" Eleanor sat down across from him. "Now you recover. Physically from whatever she was giving you, emotionally from the betrayal, and professionally from the attempted sabotage. It's going to take time." "And Sterling Industries?" "We'll be fine. Once the FBI finishes their investigation and confirms that you were the victim rather than a participant in any wrongdoing, your company will actually be stronger than before. You've shown that you're willing to sacrifice personal relationships to maintain ethical business practices." Marcus nodded slowly. "Eleanor, I want you to know how grateful I am. If you hadn't called when you did, you would have figured it out eventually. Marcus, you're too smart and too successful to be fooled indefinitely. Victoria's plan had too many moving parts to stay hidden forever. Maybe, but by then it might have been too late." 6 months later, Marcus stood in the same boardroom where he had almost signed away his empire. This time, however, the documents on the table were very different. They outlined a new charitable foundation dedicated to helping victims of financial fraud and domestic abuse. Victoria and David Chen had both been convicted on multiple federal charges. Victoria received 25 years in prison, while Chen got 15 for his cooperation. The Swiss medication that had been making Marcus sick was completely out of his system, and his health had returned to normal. Sterling Industries had not only survived the scandal, but had actually grown stronger. Investors appreciated Marcus's decisive action in handling the threat to the company, and several major contracts had been signed based on the reputation for integrity the situation had established. Eleanor Hartwell had agreed to serve on the board of the new charitable foundation, and Marcus had discovered that having someone he could trust completely as a business partner was incredibly valuable. "Are you ready to sign these documents?" Eleanor asked with a slight smile. Marcus picked up his fountain pen, the same one he had been holding 6 months earlier when Eleanor's phone call changed everything. "This time, I know exactly what I'm signing and why," he replied. As he signed his name to the charitable foundation papers, Marcus reflected on how close he had come to losing everything to someone who was supposed to love him. The experience had taught him that trust was precious and should never be given blindly, but also that there were people in the world who would risk their own safety to protect someone they cared about. The fountain pen moved smoothly across the signature line, but this time it was creating something positive rather than preventing something disastrous. Marcus Sterling had learned that sometimes the most dangerous enemies come from within our own homes, but also that true friends appear when we need them most. Outside the boardroom windows, the city stretched endlessly, full of opportunities and challenges. Marcus had built an empire once and nearly lost it to betrayal. Now he was building something new, something better, with people he could trust. The signature was complete, the foundation was established, and a new chapter of his life had begun. This time, he would be more careful about who he trusted with his heart, but he wouldn't let Victoria's betrayal make him cynical about human nature entirely. Some people were capable of extraordinary evil, but others were capable of extraordinary good. The trick was learning to tell the difference before it was too late. Marcus Sterling had learned that lesson the hard way, but he had learned it well. And now, with Eleanor's friendship and his own hard-earned wisdom, he was ready to build something that would last.